Hello, it's Bob Pandolfo. It's Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. And, yesterday I posted a video about my heart attack that I had last year. And the reason why, I put that video is because the way I look at it, if I can help one person even avoid getting a heart attack or a stroke by giving him, some of my experience, it's worth it. So I mean, it's not, I'm not doing this to make money or anything like that. I'm not selling anything. It's just that, with these health issues, we're not really always kept informed that well. You go to the doctor and doctor says, oh, your cholesterol is up here, go on a statin. And like I explained in my video, there's a lot of different tests you can do to get a much better idea of where you are and what your risk is for a heart attack. But a lot of doctors, don't tell you. In fact, most doctors don't tell you these things. I mean, that's why I recommend it too. Go to a cardiologist if you're worried about your heart. And heart disease is the #1 killer in the country. And as I mentioned in my video too, the most common type of stroke is actually the risk factors are similar as far as high cholesterol, and hardening of the arteries. So, we're kind of like dumbed down in America. The medical profession, they think people are like, oh, just, tell them to go on a drug. We don't have to really give them much information. You kind of saw this during the COVID too, where they basically, told you what they wanted to tell you and really didn't give you all the information that they should have. I mean, and some of the information wasn't even accurate. So that's the thing, is you have to do your own research. And the internet is great for that. YouTube is fantastic. It really is. There are cardiologists on here. But at the same time, some of the, information, like for instance on YouTube, when it comes to dieting, you have to be, careful because, and I'll give you my experience. Now, nobody in my family, either my father's side or my mother's side, had ever had a heart attack. So when my cholesterol was up, I exercised every day, and I was like, oh, I'll get it down. I got it down years ago. Anyway, like 26 years before I had a heart attack, my cholesterol was up, and I got it down like 70 points just by dieting. So I thought, well, I'll do that again. And this time I did some research, and as I mentioned in that video, I was eating more fiber and certain things that would lower your cholesterol. And it did lower my cholesterol sharply, but I still got a heart attack. But I lowered my cholesterol by like 70 points in 4 months, from 283 to 214. And my LDL went down 49 points. Now, if I had started sooner, maybe I wouldn't have had a heart attack. But of course, like as I mentioned in my video, I could have gone on a low dose statin and dieted, and I may not have gotten a heart attack. It probably would have protected me. But I wanted to mention something about eating. So I thought, well, why did I get a heart attack when it really didn't run in my family? And I wasn't fat. I was 10 pounds heavier. I was 10 pounds overweight, basically like about 8 to 10 pounds heavier than I am right now. Pretty much at the weight that I want to be right now. So it wasn't weight. It wasn't that I don't exercise. I exercise really almost every day. I've had for many years. And I actually ate, pretty well-balanced diet. But I didn't years ago. In my 20s and 30s in particular, I yo-yo dieted a lot. I mean, I would gain 30, 40 pounds, and then I'd lose it. And I ate plenty of the things that they claim are bad for your heart. Like, I mean, one of my favorite things was to go to a steakhouse. And, in later years, like when I got into my 50s, we'd go to a steakhouse, my wife and I, and we'd split a steak. And a lot of times we didn't even finish it. We took it home. Whereas years ago, I used to go order a 24-ounce ribeye and have, baked potato with it, and, and then a piece of cheesecake after dinner. And I ate the whole thing. Back in my 20s, I could eat. As you get older, sometimes I don't know, I guess everybody's different, but I know I've been eating small meals, for like the last 15 years. And even going back into my 40s, I started to eat smaller meals. I can't eat the way I used to. I would get just tired And plus I was trying to control my weight, which I did for the last 22 years. I actually had really just 1 or 2 years when I gained more than like 10 pounds during the winter. Most of the time I kept my weight within a 10-pound radius for the last like 20 years. But that yo-yo dieting, that's the thing, the plaque builds up. It starts building up. You can't, so if you don't take care of yourself or eat like a pig, while you're in your 20s and 30s, and then you start dieting, that doesn't mean that, you're not going to have any plaque, because, the plaque is there from when you didn't diet. And when you ate junk, I mean, things like potato chips, French fries and stuff, years ago, I didn't care. I just ate it, whereas in the last like 20 years or so, I don't eat that. I have French fries probably like twice a year, and I have a few of them, stuff like potato chips and, junk food like that. I just don't eat that stuff. And I haven't for years. But, besides the yo-yo dieting, which I think is probably really bad for you, and the fact that I did eat, some heavy, quite a few heavy meals with a lot of saturated fat and things that they claim, aren't good for you, as far as your heart. I did go do the, protein diet, this, what they call the keto diet now. And I did do that several times. And one time in my early 40s, I did the Atkins diet. Some of you may remember Dr. Atkins. That was the original, low carb diet. In that one, you only ate 20 grams of carbs a day. Basically, you ate meat, all day long. And, a lot of people like swear by this now, and it's gotten to the point now with these keto diets that they've now evolved into carnivore diets, where people are just eating meat all day long, similar to the Atkins diet, really. So they're kind of, there are some people, you can do a keto diet sensibly, but the Atkins diet was not a good diet. It was, it was a diet that's bad for you. Why did I do it? Because I took a shortcut. It's a fad diet. And I was frustrated because, to lose weight, like at the time I was close to 40 pounds overweight. This is going back when I was like 42 years old. And, I knew from experience that when I go on a regular diet where I'm just cutting calories and everything, I'll lose like a half pound a week or something. And I was like, well, I'm going to try this diet because, I can lose faster, because I'm going to get into, the ketosis, and I'm going to burn fat and everything, because that's what they told you. And I knew it wasn't good for me. In fact, at the time I was working in a place where there was a nurse who was working there, and she told me, this is really bad. You shouldn't be doing that. It's really bad for you. Bad for your heart. And I was like, yeah. I'm losing weight. So it's a cop out. It's a fad diet. I consider it myself, the fact that I did it 3 times, and and 2 times I did it for several months. One time I only did it for like maybe 6 weeks, but I consider it to be like a weakness, on my part. I wanted a shortcut, and that's why when I got to 47 years old, 22 years ago, I decided I'm never going to get 30, 40 pounds overweight anymore. Because it's just too hard to lose the weight, and plus I was getting older, so I thought this is not going to be good for you. Because I was always aware that, hey, look, a lot of men die from heart disease. I mean, that's the #1 killer in the country. And so I was like, try to take care of myself better, so I'm not going to, yo-yo diet anymore. But I still did keto twice after that, just to lose. Like there was one time I gained 15 pounds, and another time I gained like 10 pounds, and I was like, I'll go on keto for a while, Now, I'm not saying that that's the reason why I had the heart attack. It's probably a combination of things. In my case, I don't think it's hereditary. I think it's mainly, what I ate when I was younger, and all it takes is a clot. I mean, they've told me that my heart looks pretty good and everything, but I just happen to have, some calcification and a clot developed. I wasn't on any medication or anything, so whatever. Hey, look, it happens to a lot of people. The thing about what's happened though with this, keto, these keto diets and these low carb diets is that a lot of people now talk about carbs, carbohydrates, as if it's like poison. And it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, yes. See, the whole idea of, going on a low carb diet originally was, cut down on bad carbs. Like, in other words, don't eat sugar, right? Don't drink soda, don't have a bunch of donuts, don't have like a lot of pizza, something that, because I mean, if you have like 4 slices of pizza, it's not good for you. Don't eat like a huge dish of pasta. Don't eat stuff like potato chips. I mean, there are a lot of bad carbs. There's no question about that. But now you have this almost like this cult way of thinking where people are like, they're afraid to eat potatoes or vegetables or fruit. And I mean, hey, look, I'm not a scientist or a nutritionalist, but you don't have to be a nutritionalist or a scientist to know that fruit isn't bad for you. It's good for you. I mean, blueberries are definitely good for you. And actually, they're low carb compared to a lot of fruits. And, it's just that now people actually think that fruit is bad for you. And potatoes are not bad for you. They're just not. And even like whole grain breads and stuff, I mean, all that stuff, some people, again, think that bread is some kind of poison. But I mean, if you eat like a loaf of bread every day, I guess it would be bad for you. But if you have a slice of bread, whole grain bread, I don't know. It's hard for me to think that for most people that's going to be what's going to kill you. And now you have a lot of people who are taking this to extremes and going on the carnivore diet where they're eating meat all day. Now, I have this website up, Blue Zones. This is this guy who used to be a cyclist, who has he's done some shows. There was some specials on Netflix. His name is Dave Butner, and he was an athlete years ago. He would ride his bike for on these long trips, and he's worked for National Geographic as an explorer and this and that. So he has this website, Blue Zones, and he has that show which was on Netflix. So basically, what they do is they talk about areas where people live better and live longer, as you can see here. And there are certain places in the world, in Greece and in Italy, so there's like 6 blue zones or something like that. And you can read other things about blue zones, by the way. There's books on it. There's other, there's been other TV shows. And when you talk about diet, the people in these blue zones, none of them are carnivores. And none of them eat a lot of meat. Now there are, in some of these blue zones, they do eat meat. They eat beef, and they eat pork, but it's not, they don't eat large amounts of it. In Japan, they have less heart disease, but they eat more fish, which makes sense because there's been a lot of new studies that show that people who have higher amounts of omega-3 in their bodies are healthier and live longer. And that's not to say, and I'm not saying that if you have omega-3, it's going to lower your cholesterol. I took omega-3 supplements, and they did absolutely nothing for my cholesterol. But this is different. What they're saying is, in some of these new studies, is that people in different areas of the world who consume more food that raises their omega-3s, because you can test for it. It's just like you can test for vitamin D, you can test for omega-3. So these people have, significantly higher, like 20%, 15, 20, 25% more omega-3 than a lot of people in other areas who are, not eating enough, not eating fish or flaxseed or olive oil or things that would raise, could raise your omega-3s, and they live longer, Now, and this is where it gets tricky with keto too, and this is one thing I wanted to mention. There's definitely a smart way you could do keto. Like if you want to lose weight and you want to do it where you're not going to be, filling your arteries up with saturated fat, you could do, like, for instance, I'll give you a friend. My son, Robbie, had studied the keto diet and a lot. And so, for instance, you could eat for breakfast something like 5 ounces of chicken, like chicken breast, with, say, some broccoli. And for lunch, you could have a piece of salmon with some other vegetable, zucchini. You know, there are certain vegetables that are low carb, right? A lot of the vegetables are low carb actually. And then for dinner, you could have a grass-fed piece of steak, say a 4 or 5 ounce grass-fed, lean piece of steak, grass-fed. It doesn't even have to be lean, just grass-fed, with another vegetable, like say a small salad. And then you can have some almonds for a snack later on or something. So you're not having any sugar, you're not having any of the bad carbs, but you had a vegetable with each meal, right? Now, how do people think, oh, I can't do that. I'm not going to go into ketosis. But no, you can. You can, because you're going to be like 30, 35 grams of carbs, maybe even 40. It doesn't make any difference. You're going to be eating healthy, and you're not going to be eating the meat. If you have the grass-fed meat, you're not going to be eating the meat that's high in omega-6, because the grass-fed meat is higher in omega-3. And that's the thing, the grass-fed meats are more expensive. But the people who have money, who can afford it, they can go on that type of diet. They can eat better food, eat organic food, have grass-fed meats. And you could lose weight and still have vegetables 3 times a day, and then you're doing a keto diet that's a lot healthier. But what a lot of people are doing is just that they're eliminating these carbs are bad. So they're just eating meat, meat, beef and pork and eggs and cheese, all kinds of saturated fat, and they're not hardly eating any carbs. They're afraid to eat, a lot of these other carbs. And, I think it's a fool's gold. I really do. I mean, and I think some of these people who are making these YouTube videos, who are pushing like carnivore diets, I think you have to be a little suspicious. I mean, there's still a lot of scientific evidence that shows that, saturated fat does build up in your arteries. Now, there's also evidence that saturated fats can be good for you. I mean, there's no question about that. But the thing is that, like I was telling you years ago, I used to go out in my 20s, I used to go out to a steakhouse and get a 24-ounce ribeye, eat the whole thing. You can't tell me that that's good. I mean, if I would have eaten 4 ounces of it, or you know what I mean, like a hamburger is 4 ounces, right? That's different. But the same thing with butter. Butter is saturated fat. Now you can get better butter, like the Irish butter. I can't remember the name of the company now. That big brand of Irish butter is grass-fed. That's going to be healthier for you than the butter that's not grass-fed. But still, even with butter, I mean, if you put a little butter on a slice of toast a couple times a week, it's probably not going to hurt you, especially if it's like a whole grain. But if you slather butter on everything you eat, and tons of it, it's going to be too much saturated fat, right? I mean, that's what they tell you. I mean, and again, I know people think this is all, oh no, it doesn't make any difference, it's not saturated fat, it's sugar and everything. Look, sugar, they're trying to say sugar is bad for you, and a lot of carbs are bad for you. Yeah, that's probably true. But that's not to say that saturated fat in big amounts is good for you either. There's a guy named Barry Sears who wrote a lot of books based on a diet that he created called the Zone Diet. And his theory, the reason why he came out with these books is because people in his family were getting heart disease in their 30s and 40s. And they, he was looking at, people in his family, and it's like, wait a minute, they're not fat. They're not eating poorly. Then why are they, what's going on here? So he in his, theory of eating, the zone, what he calls the zone is when you combine your carbs and your protein so that it doesn't cause a spike in blood sugar. Right? And so it's similar to like these carnivore and keto diets, except for that you're not eliminating anything. So for instance, like a lot of people think, oh, potatoes are going to spike my blood sugar, right? Well, on his diet, no, they wouldn't, because you're going to have a small potato, right? You're not going to eat like a giant potato or a bunch of French fries. You're going to have, just a little potato, maybe with a little olive oil and some seasoning on it. Then you're going to have a piece of protein, again, not huge, piece of chicken, piece of fish, piece of beef. And then you're going to have, say, some string beans or broccoli or something like that. When you combine, so now you have fats, you have good fats, you have protein, and you have carbs, but you're blending them. And he explains in his book that when you blend them like that, your blood sugar doesn't spike. So you don't get that insulin rush. why a lot of people go on the keto diet, is because they're trying to control their blood sugar. They think that the carbs are causing, them to have, to hurt them basically by having, too high, their blood sugar is too high. But you don't have to eliminate all carbs. You just, if you combine them, the way Barry Sears mentions, it basically does the same thing. And it's very clever, because then you're eating a well-balanced diet. You're still controlling your weight. You can eat fruits, vegetables, whatever you want, but you don't have that blood sugar spike, So I think he was ahead of his time, actually. So the thing is that, fad diets ultimately, aren't a good way to eat. I mean, they're a good way to lose weight fast. And that's why I went on the keto. And like I said, to me, it was a cop-out. I didn't want to take 6 to 8 months to lose the weight. I thought, well, I'll lose it in 3 months. And I think that the whole thing with ketosis is a little exaggerated too, because what happens is like when I went on the Atkins diet when I was like 42, whatever, I was eating so much meat and pork and fat and bacon, and that after a couple of weeks, I was eating a lot less, because first of all, when you eat a lot of saturated fat and a lot of fatty foods, it's very satisfying. In other words, you don't feel hungry afterwards. It's not when you eat a lot of sugar, and this is another reason why people go on these keto diets. If you eat a lot of carbs, like too many carbs at once, it does raise your blood sugar, and you could get tired afterwards, and which sometimes people will eat because they're tired, or you could feel weak, so they'll eat because they feel weak. So you're eating because you're overloading on carbs. And of course, the keto diet, eliminates that, so you feel more satiated, and you don't get hungry. So what happens is you end up like, and I know this happened to me, and I know other people this happened to too. After a few weeks on that diet, I was eating less, right? Because I wasn't eating, like when I ate a steak, I wasn't eating a big steak. I was eating like a small piece of steak and like a small salad. I mean, that was my dinner. So I lost weight, but did I lose weight because I was on getting into ketosis, or did I lose weight because I was eating less because it was more satiating? You know what I mean? I wasn't hungry. I didn't have to eat that much, because if you eat a lot of fat, it burns slower in your system, so you don't get hungry. It doesn't spike your blood sugar. Again, that's part of the keto thing. But so that's why I don't even know if the whole that's why you don't have to do like 10 grams of carbs. This is the people. There's a smarter way to do keto. Like I said, where you just eat vegetables with each meal, and you can even have fruit. You could have like blueberries. Say you may have an omelet in the morning with eggs and cheese, and you have some blueberries. And then for lunch you have a piece of chicken and some broccoli, and for dinner you have a piece of steak and zucchini, a small salad, whatever. And for a snack you just have some nuts or something. You can eat almonds and things like that. That's a smarter way to do keto. And this whole thing with the carnivore, I don't know. I mean, like I said, there isn't a single blue zone in the world that anyone knows about where people eat meat all day long. So these blue zones, this is where people are living longer. Like there's a lot of centurions, I guess. Is that what you call them? People that are living past 100. They're not eating cheeseburgers all day long. Now, this is the last thing I want to mention about this on this video. But some people have been saying, well, some of these blue zones, it's the older people that are living longer, but the younger people, they're not as healthier. So they're trying to say like the blue zones, they're not as prominent as they used to be. Well, that's because, like, if you look at Japan, for instance, there's more McDonald's and things like that. In other words, the Western culture got into was brought into the Eastern culture, and people started, drinking more soda and eating cheeseburgers and French fries and things that they didn't eat, where they used to eat, soups and noodles and vegetables and fish. But the older people did eat that, and a lot of them lived far longer than the average person, and their rate of heart disease in Japan is still lower, and especially, like I said, before they got more immersed in the Western culture. So it's just something to think about. I mean, look at your options carefully. If you want to lose weight, and you think you can lose weight faster on the keto diet, do it sensibly. you know, I don't think I did it sensibly, especially the first time when I did the Atkins diet. The Atkins diet was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and a lot of people were doing it. And like I said, there was a nurse who told me, this is not going to be good for you. And then I ended up doing it a couple more times because again, it's weakness. I wanted a shortcut, and there aren't any shortcuts. And finally, when I got to the age of 47 years old, I was like, well, I'm gonna exercise every day from now on, and I'm never gonna get fat again. I'm never. I mean, there was one time I think when I was 15 pounds overweight in the last like 22 years. And who knows, all that splurging in my 20s and 30s and yo-yo dieting and and going on like the Atkins diet. I mean, that's probably the reason why I got the heart attack in the first place. But I just wanted to mention that because there's a lot of, there's like a fear of carbohydrates, which is ridiculous. I mean, obviously if you overload on carbohydrates, yes, it's going to spike your blood sugar. But if you eat sensibly, it's not. And of course, there are good carbohydrates. I mean, my God, they're loaded. A lot of these carbohydrates, like vegetables and fruits and vegetables, are loaded with antioxidants. So anyway, I wish you all the best of health. I'm just doing a couple of these videos because, like I said, if I can, steer one person in the right direction as far as, like I said in my first video about my heart attack, find out everything you can. Like there are all these different tests you can do. If you're worried about your cholesterol, you don't have to, just go by even what your doctor says. You can go to a specialist, go to a cardiologist. Ask the cardiologist, what about the ApoB test? What about the different types of bad cholesterol? What kind of diets? What should I eat? There's so much to this. And don't let the doctor dumb you down, because a lot of these doctors, they treat us like we're a bunch of infants. They don't really tell us, and of course a lot of the MDs, aren't really up on this anyway. I mean, if you're concerned about your heart, which I think everybody should be really, but if your cholesterol's going up, the best thing to do is go to a specialist, go to a cardiologist. So anyway, subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you watching, and lots of luck and best of health to you.